You finish at 2 a.m. The apartment smells like industrial cleaner and fresh air. 4 hours ago, it smelled like something you trained yourself not to name. You pull the last biohazard bag to the door, strip your gloves, and check the room one final time. The carpet is new. The walls are primed. You lock the door and leave the key under the mat for the landlord. On the drive home, you call the dead man's sister. You tell her the apartment is ready. She cries and says thank you. You believe completely that this job matters. That's the version of you that answers the phone 6 weeks later when a man you've never met offers you $4,000 to clean a house in the suburbs before the police arrive. And that is where this story actually begins. You didn't plan to become a crime scene cleaner. Nobody does. You were 26. One afternoon, your boss sent you to a house where an elderly woman had passed away in her bathroom. The restoration crew wouldn't touch it. You did. You put on the suit, you turned off the part of your brain that wanted to leave, and you cleaned. When you finished, the woman's daughter walked through the house and broke down. Not from grief, from relief. Someone had given her back a place that didn't look like the worst day of her life. That moment hooked you harder than any paycheck ever could. You get certified. Bloodborne pathogens, hazmat handling, OSHA protocols. You start your own company, business cards, a van with no logo because nobody wants the neighbors to know. You charge by the square foot and the severity. A suicide in a bathtub is one price. A homicide in a living room is another. An undiscovered death in summer heat is the one that wakes you up at night even after the job is done. Within a year, you're getting calls from property managers, landlords, sometimes the police themselves. They hand you the address and walk away. You go in alone. The job teaches you something nobody tells you in training. Grief has a pattern, but so does guilt. The families who are grieving ask questions. They want to know if their person suffered. They want to know what you saw. You learn to answer carefully. Enough truth to validate their pain, never enough to create a new image they can't unsee. But the guilty ones don't ask questions. They give you the address. They give you cash. They don't come to the property. The first time you notice the difference, you file it away and keep working. The second time, you notice faster. By the fifth time, you tell yourself it's not your job to ask. You tell yourself the police already cleared the scene. You tell yourself you're just the person with the enzyme spray and the box of contractor bags. That's how it starts. Not with a bribe, not with a threat, with a $4,000 job that takes you 90 minutes. A man calls from a blocked number. He says there's been an accident at a rental property. He says the tenant is gone, and he needs the unit turned over before the next tenants walk through on Monday. He says the police have already been through. You drive to the address. It's a nice house, suburban, 2-car garage. You go inside and you see the living room, and you know immediately that nobody called the police. The pattern on the walls isn't consistent with what the man described. The furniture has been moved. There are marks on the hardwood near the back door that you've seen before. You stand in the middle of that living room for 6 minutes. Then you open your kit and start working. The money changes. 3 jobs in 2 months, always from the same intermediary, always cash, always properties that don't add up. You tell yourself you're cleaning, not covering. You hire a kid named Marco who reminds you of yourself 5 years ago, eager, a little haunted, but convinced the work means something. Marco handles the legitimate calls. You handle the ones that come from blocked numbers. The wall between the two starts to dissolve. One night, you catch yourself using Marco's supply manifest to account for chemicals you used on a job he doesn't know about. You're standing in your garage at midnight, falsifying inventory records for enzyme cleaner, and the thought that crosses your mind isn't shame. It's relief that the numbers work out. The intermediary has a name now, Garza. You never meet him in person, but you learn his voice. He's calm. He asks about your family once. He asks about Marco once. You understand both questions for what they are. Garza sends you to a house in the hills. This one is different. There's a room in the basement that has been cleaned before, not by you, but by someone who didn't know what they were doing. The bleach smell is wrong. The luminol would light this place up like a stadium. Garza's instructions are specific. The floor needs to be replaced, not cleaned. The walls need to be sealed, not scrubbed. You understand that you're not removing evidence of one event. You're removing the evidence that this room exists for a purpose. You do it anyway. It takes you 11 hours. When you drive home, you pass a billboard for a cleaning service that says, "We make it like it never happened." You almost laugh. Marco quits on a Tuesday. He doesn't say why. He leaves his key on the workbench and a note that says, "I counted the inventory." You read the note 3 times, then you burn it. The last job comes on a Sunday. Garza's voice is different, faster. He gives you an address you recognize. It's the same suburban house from the first job, the one with the living room and the marks on the hardwood. You drive there knowing what you'll find. The house is empty. The living room is clean. But the garage has a car that shouldn't be there. And the trunk of that car is a job you cannot do, and remain the person you were when you took your first call from a dead man's sister. You stand in that garage for a long time. Then you close the trunk. You get in your van. You drive to a police station you've never been to, and you sit in the parking lot for 45 minutes before you walk inside. The detective who takes your statement asks how long this has been going on. You say you're not sure. He asks when you knew. You say you're not sure about that either. He writes it down. He doesn't believe you. You don't believe you either. The apartment where you started smelled like fresh air when you left. The garage where you ended smelled exactly the same. That's the thing about being good at your job. By the time you're finished, nobody can tell what happened, including you.